Imagine it's late one night and you're lying in bed, resting after a hard day's work. As you're trying to doze off to sleep though, you think you hear the shuffling of tiny little feet. Peering curiously into the darkness, you can't seem to make anything out and lay your head back down to sleep. But suddenly there it is again, the quick pitter-patter of tiny little feet, followed by a mischievous snicker. This time you're sure there's something there, and as you bolt upright you spot it. There, standing atop the covers at the foot of the bed, is the doll from hell itself, Chucky. This pint-sized killer has been terrorizing us since the early 80s, when the soul of a dying serial killer was transferred into the plastic body of an innocent-looking doll. Since then, he has racked up an impressive murder count, with his preferred method of killing being stabbing his victims to death with a large steak knife. Although, unlike many monsters and killers we've featured before, Chucky doesn't mind setting up elaborate traps for his victims, taking pleasure in their accidental deaths. So what exactly are you up against if you find yourself in a one-on-one deathmatch with the infamous killer doll? Out of all the monsters and killers we've put the average Joe up against, Chucky is unique in that he isn't overwhelmingly more powerful than the average person. Chucky doesn't have special magical powers to sneak up on you, isn't stronger than most people, or particularly speedy, although given his small stature he is pretty quick on his feet and agile to boot, but certainly nothing approaching supernatural powers. Chucky also doesn't have any dark or strange voodoo to bewitch you with. Instead, Chucky relies on the element of surprise, taking advantage of the fact that most of the time he looks like nothing more than a friendly doll, lulling his victims into a false sense of security with his non-threatening outer appearance. Chucky waits for the opportune time to strike before delivering a killing blow. This means that if you come across any strange dolls, you probably shouldn't bend over to pick them up and inspect them up close, because although Chucky is usually inhabiting a good guy doll, he does have the ability to jump into other dolls. So this would be a good time to start eyeing your childhood mementos and stuffed teddy bears with some serious suspicion. Chucky's second biggest strength is his cleverness. Typically we tell you to prepare elaborate traps in order to overcome the physical or supernatural strengths of the enemies we've covered before. However, in this case, it should be you who's aware of falling into one of Chucky's traps. This is probably the first foe we faced where your main goal is going to be staying out of any would-be traps while trying to avoid a miniature killer doll. No easy task. Lastly, Chucky is incredibly resilient to damage of any kind. Not only does the voodoo curse keep his spirit trapped in a doll or let him transfer to other dolls, but it means that even destroying the doll itself is no guarantee of defeat. You can do massive damage to Chucky's physical body, only to have the evil spirit return later in another plastic body. And speaking of doing damage, you're going to be hard-pressed to do anything critically damaging to what is essentially a plastic doll. Shoot an arm off? He'll just pop it back in. Melt his face? Chucky doesn't need to see. Blow him up into pieces? Well, actually that might buy you some time, but again, he's gonna come back. He always comes back. So how are you going to defeat a pint-sized killer inhabiting a cheap plastic doll he can simply leap out of and can lay elaborate traps, which might incapacitate you long enough for Chucky to transfer his soul into your body and yours into his doll? This is going to be a battle that takes place in stages, and as always, preparation is gonna be key. First, you want to make sure that you choose the battleground. As usual, it's always better to fight on the home turf, but it'll be especially important to deny Chucky the advantage of setting up any kind of trap. Knowing the terrain will let you immediately identify if something is out of place. This also means, though, that you need to ensure you always remain aware of Chucky's location. Too many of his victims have made the mistake of letting him slip out of sight, only to be ambushed later. To track Chucky's movements, you're going to want to plan in advance and get your hands on some cheap, easily purchasable acoustic and vibration detector alarms. Amazon has a wide selection available right now, which runs from as low as $6 up to several hundred. But you don't have to break your bank to beat Chucky. Just buy a dozen cheaper vibration detectors and spread them in the area around you. As Chucky sprints around behind furniture and in the shadows, his little footsteps will set off the vibration detectors, letting you easily track his movements. Now that you know where Chucky is, the question is, how do you kill this midget murderer? As mentioned before, we here at the Infographics Show often prefer problem solving through superior firepower. But hitting a 1-foot-tall and very fast-moving object is gonna be a challenge for even skilled sharpshooters. A sawed-off 12-gauge shotgun is an appealing choice. The wide spread of the shotgun pellets will give you a lot of room for error, and while useless at moderate to long ranges, it's an incredibly devastating weapon at close range. That sounds perfect, but Chucky's tiny body simply isn't going to be very effective, even if you turn it into Swiss cheese. A high-powered flamethrower is also an appealing option, but again, you're dealing with a foe who will simply leave his melted plastic body and inhabit a new object, putting you at severe disadvantage as you try to guess which random doll is going to try and murder you. For the first time in the infographic show history, we're going to advocate for peace, or at least not for outright obliteration. Your goal isn't going to be to destroy Chucky, but rather to imprison him. First, you need to make sure there are no suitable objects for Chucky to inhabit in the vicinity. This is why picking your battlefield is so important. Once you're sure that there's nowhere for Chucky's soul to flee, you're gonna let him come to you. But again, with your alarm system set up so you're not surprised. Chucky is ultimately still just a regular Joe himself, simply trapped in the body of a plastic doll. So while he may be reluctant to come face you after knowing he can't get the element of surprise, resorting to a few well-placed insults has been shown to be effective in the past in raising his ire to murderous levels. What seems to be particularly effective is insulting his now non-existent manhood. After all, dolls don't have boy parts, although in at least one film this point was a little bit confused. However you lure him out into the open, once sufficiently pissed off, Chucky is going to try to throw caution to the wind and come at you in full murder mode. Don't panic, this is exactly what you want, because unknown to Chucky, you've been prepared the whole time with a handheld liquid nitrogen shooter. That's right, you heard us correctly. In 2016, real-life X-Men candidate Colin Furze built a rig that shot liquid nitrogen from a backpack storage container through a palm-mounted device. Shooting a stream of liquid nitrogen at -302 degrees Fahrenheit, Furze's device can instantly flash freeze any object in range, and in this case, it'll be Chucky's tiny little plastic body. So now that you have a frozen murder doll that's as fragile as glass, you're going to be tempted to just smash the damn thing to pieces. But again, remember that if the body's destroyed, Chucky will just come back. Instead, it's time to get creative with Chucky's ultimate fate. First, you're going to remove his limbs to ensure Chucky can't get away or manipulate objects, leaving him as just a head on a body. Unable to use his hands or feet, Chucky won't be running anywhere, and he won't be able to perform the voodoo ritual that lets him jump into a new host. Then simply hire a boat and transport the tiny armless and legless killer to a deep spot in the ocean. We recommend Lidkey Deep in the Eurasian basin of the Arctic Ocean. Unlike many other oceans, the Arctic Ocean isn't as heavily fished by drag netting, the practice of lowering nets to the seafloor and scouring the ocean bottom for fish, which might accidentally end up getting Chucky into someone's net and possibly somehow letting him find a new body. We want to make sure nobody ever sees Chucky again, so the 17,880 feet of the Lidkey Deep is our best bet. And there you have it, you've defeated your tiny tormentor and ensured a killer doll-free future for the rest of humanity. Pat yourself on the back, you deserve it. Now go watch our other videos in our You vs. series. First up, we suggest You vs. Freddy Krueger. Come on, click it.